Welcome in to the PFF podcast. Steve Palazzolo here, joined by Zac Robinson. This is your big-time Throwcast edition of the PFF pod. We break down quarterbacks every which way, so we're going to have a lot of fun every Tuesday/Wednesday here on the PFF podcast, all about the quarterbacks. But before we dive in, I want to tell you about our friends over at DraftKings. Week 1 is in the books, but it's not too late to get closer to the game you love with DraftKings 1-week fantasy football. This Sunday, DraftKings is hosting a $100,000 Pick'em contest that is totally free to enter. Pick'em is the newest way to play 1-week fantasy football, and drafting your team is faster than ever. DraftKings has organized players into only 8 tiers. All you have to do is select one player from each tier. You can choose between public contests with big cash prizes or private contests where you can compete against a group of friends. DraftKings also has beginner and casual contests where you'll play against people of similar skill level. The best part is you get to draft a new team each week without any commitment. So get to DraftKings.com now and use the promo code PFF to play in DraftKings' free contest with $100,000 in total prizes this Sunday. That's promo code PFF to compete for your share of $100,000 in total prizes. The contest is totally free to enter, so why wouldn't you try? DraftKings, the game inside the game. Eligibility restrictions apply, and see DraftKings.com for more details. All right, Zach, let's get into some Week 1 action, and for those following along at home, we're going to be talking stats and grades and scheme and all sorts of goodies surrounding some of the top quarterbacks or some of the quarterbacks who struggled here in Week 1. We're going to be talking about Sam Bradford, who was our top-graded quarterback of the week. Tom Brady, who had an uneven week for the future Hall of Famer. Houston Texans quarterback situation, Deshaun Watson and Tom Savage. Matthew Stafford of the Detroit Lions. And Jared Goff, who had a fantastic Week 1 for the Los Angeles Rams. So those guys are on the schedule for today. And if you guys want to follow along at home with player grades, it's all about PFF Edge. Get to PFF Edge. Get your player grades. It's a part of the PFF Edge package. And if you're into the signature stats that we're going to be dropping here, QBs under pressure and deep ball numbers, that's all a part of PFF Elite. So you guys can follow along at home with those numbers. Zach, give me a Week 1 overview. I was talking to Sam Monson on our Week 1 review pod. It was like this defensive-centric week. If it was either good defense or bad offense. What did you think of the week as a whole? Did you think defenses got the better of a lot of the offenses?
I think so. I think at this point maybe they're just a little bit ahead of offenses in terms of getting into a rhythm. I think the biggest thing you saw was O-line play was a huge factor. Typically if you could protect your guy, you had a chance. We saw the Texans just absolutely up front were a mess, and it led to some bad QB play. And I think those were the biggest things was O-line play, and you're right, the defense is just a little bit ahead of the offenses at this point.
Yeah, I kind of like it. I'm a QB guy by nature and throw the ball around the yard guy by nature, but I like watching good defense. I like watching QBs and passing games have to fight for their yards, and so I don't mind an uncomfortable watch every now and again. All right, let's get into QB by QB. Let's start with Sam Bradford. He was our top-graded quarterback for Week 1. Anybody that watched Bradford on Monday Night Football, probably not surprised. It was a 90.1 overall grade in your program or your PFF Edge, and this was eerily reminiscent of last year, Sam Bradford's first game, which actually occurred in Week 2, because if you remember a year ago, he gets traded by the Eagles, goes to the Vikings a week before the season, wasn't ready to start Week 1, makes his debut in Week 2 at home against the Green Bay Packers, and at that time, I thought it was the best game I'd ever seen from Sam Bradford. There were still throws that he made in that game, under pressure, about to get hit, touchdown on a post to Stephon Diggs. I mean, there were some throws he made in that game against Green Bay that I was like, man, I've never seen Sam Bradford do this, and that's kind of what he did against the New Orleans Saints on Monday Night Football. The signature pass, in my mind, another one when he was about to get smacked in the mouth and just flipped it, on the other side of a linebacker. And you talk about throwing guys open. This was a perfect example. So I thought Bradford was sharp. He was accurate. What did you see from him, and was this the best game we've ever seen from Bradford?
I'm with you, Steve. I think that it was a lot like the Green Bay game last year. Tight window throw after tight window throw. He was 5 for 5 for 130 yards on balls traveling 20 yards down the field. Just looked like he was in total control of the offense and just total control of his game. We saw some good under pressure throws that we've seen, from him, especially last year in that Green Bay game, getting hit in the face and somehow finding a way to squeeze a ball in there. So that's definitely, I'm with you. It's definitely, probably the top, 2 or 3 game that you've seen from Sam Bradford.
Now, I don't like to always just throw a wet blanket on things here, but of course it's week 1, and the caveat to all of this stuff is it's a small sample size, and for the most part these guys are what we thought they were. But I've been waiting for Sam Bradford to put these games together for quite a while.
You were talking about it last week. That's right.
I've been a Sam Bradford apologist to a point, and I know there's some people all over the Twitter sphere that either like Sam Bradford or they've just thrown this game manager label on him. And look, he is a little bit more conservative by nature, and I think that's why it surprises people that he had the top adjusted completion percentage on deep passes last year. The problem is when you go to our signature stats in PFF Elite and you go look for Sam Bradford's name last year, he won't be up there until you filter down a little bit because he just didn't attempt as many passes. So he just doesn't take those deep shots like some other quarterbacks. And look, I don't know how much of this is the Saints defense. A lot of these passes were a little bit more open, but there were some tight window shots in there as well. Where's the balance here for Bradford? He completes these passes underneath, but it's those downfield shots that he needs to keep a part of his arsenal because we know he's accurate. He makes some incredible throws.
Right. I think a lot of it too, just looking at the offensive line grades for the week, cumulatively, the Vikings had the 5th best offensive line, and we saw last year what a mess they were up front, leading, to Bradford, having to just get the ball out of his hands so quickly, check it down, and not try to extend the play and make anything happen downfield. So I think that was a big part. It looks like they've got, things cleaned up to a certain extent. We'll see once they play a better front exactly what that looks like. But when you look back at Bradford when he was at his absolute best in college, it was when, at OU, played behind a very good offensive line, and he kind of can make skill guys better around him with his accuracy and his precision because he is one of the most accurate guys when he's got a clean pocket and things are all working out up front. And so we saw that a little bit last night, and I guess we're just going to have to see if they can continue to hold up front because it looks like he's in control of the offense, 2nd year under the coordinator, so he's which is I think a first in his entire career. So that's nice. He's finally getting into a groove and getting kind of ownership of an offense, and they got the O-line up front improved. So, arrows pointing up for Bradford. We'll see if he can sustain it because last year he started off, I think, through 6 weeks or so, he was, a top 3 to 5 quarterback. So we'll see if he can hold up.
Now, the thing that you've always mentioned about Bradford that might be the thing that's been holding him back, and it wasn't really tested against the Saints. Again, I keep going back to that throw. He did make these throws with guys in his face. The one incredible throw, that was probably the throw of the week. He's about to get smacked in the mouth and throws his guy open. But you've talked about his pocket presence at times, and I always compare it to Josh McCown. But Josh McCown is the guy that sits in there under pressure and either makes this incredible throw or he sits in there too long and makes it a terrible throw. I feel like Bradford has a little bit of that in him, right? And that's what you've said. Look, when he's got the clean pocket, he can be accurate. Is that something that he can improve that might still hold him back down the road when he gets challenged a little bit more? Or are we still just encouraged by this outing and, let's just, hope he builds on it?
Yeah, I think that's kind of just who he is. And, maybe the feel in the pocket will hamper him a little bit in some games, and it'll show up in more games. Different games at different times of the season. You don't know when it's going to show up. It might show up on a 3rd and 7. It might not show up for an entire game, but he definitely has the toughness to stand in there and make throws, which is what you're looking for. And so, he may lack some of the feel and the nuances of a Tom Brady or a Drew Brees or some of those guys that are so good in the pocket, just quick sliding around and finding a quick lane to throw. But he kind of makes up for it with, his ability to stand in there. So if he can sustain those throws of standing in the pocket and getting hit and making throws like that, then that's going to be his way to kind of counterbalance, his lack of feel at times.
All right, so a great start for Sam Bradford. All about that consistency. Also have to say the New Orleans Saints, I had high hopes for them. I know it's only one game, but I thought, maybe they'll take some steps forward on defense. There were some bad coverage busts. They struggled to play all sorts of different types of coverages, especially cover two. So there are definitely some ugly plays defensively there as well. But Sam Bradford, top-graded quarterback after week one at 90.1. Let's back up a little bit and go to the opener. Thursday night, it was the New England Patriots. They dropped the banner, 5th Super Bowl championship. They're playing against the Kansas City Chiefs. And this game, while it started out with a nice, easy drive for the Patriots, and then they have a negated touchdown. Brady throws a nice pass to Gronkowski. It looks like they're about to go up 17-7, and it's just like, all right, same old Patriots, same old home opener. Chiefs are a good team, but they can't compete with New England. But wait, Kansas City makes an incredible comeback and then just dominates the second half. Plus, they hand New England the loss. Tom Brady, I thought early on looked okay, but as the game unfolded, man, this was not a Tom Brady-like game. This did not look the way things normally look in New England. The first thing that absolutely stood out was the time that he had in the pocket. And remember, if you guys do have PFF Elite and you've got our time to throw numbers, time in pocket as part of that package, when you're reading that quarterback number, it's not necessarily about how much time the offensive line is giving. It's usually how much the quarterback is taking, essentially, right? So Brady is one of the guys that gets rid of the ball quicker than anybody in the NFL. He's always a top 1, 2, 3 guy getting the ball out of his hands, 2.2, 2.3 seconds. He held the ball 2.94 seconds on average per play. That's like Aaron Rodgers type of stuff. That's one of that was 7th highest in the NFL on Sunday. That is not a Tom Brady game at all. I have a theory as to why. I think it goes back to the Julian Edelman thing, but what you see from Brady before we go into kind of the personnel and what's going on there?
Yeah, I think overall, like you said, just being forced to hold the ball. You look at what the Chiefs were doing defensively, and it kind of looked a lot like the Super Bowl and what the Falcons are doing. There's a lot of man-to-man, kind of trying to clog up the middle, and a lot of their defenses, they were dropping 8 into coverage, playing outside leverage on the slot guys, kind of forcing everything into the middle, where all the guys were, and trying to get him to throw on the perimeter, which we saw in the Super Bowl with Malcolm Mitchell. He threw more timing and rhythm routes than we've ever really seen. And I think he definitely missed that aspect to get going. You got a guy, Brandon Cooks, they had a couple timing routes on the outside that just weren't quite meshing up. Hogan was unable to get separation. And, they missed Malcolm Mitchell out there, big body, guy that can kind of make a contested catch. I think that was, to me, a huge difference. Obviously, they're missing Edelman big time, but if you're looking at just how the structure of the game went and how they were forcing the ball to the perimeter, really you had Gronkowski as a winner out there, but he has a limited route tree, and they were kind of off on a few routes. So it was a tough night. Accuracy wise was just a little off, and just a weird kind of second half as it got going there.
So this game reminded me a lot of 2015 when Julian Edelman got hurt right around week 10. Okay, so it's about week 10. At that point, Brady was, great. I think he was probably the top graded quarterback in the NFL at that point, about 10 weeks into the season. His average time in the pocket was about 2.2 seconds. Edelman goes down all of a sudden down the stretch. He didn't play the rest of the regular season. It went from 2.2 to 2.4 seconds, which is an eternity when it comes to time in the pocket. And what happened was Brady kept throwing these low percentage. It became a go back shoulder type of game, because you just mentioned, hey, Gronk couldn't separate, so they tried back shoulders, and they tried these outside the numbers types of throws. It just was not his style and his game. So there were some ugly games in there for Brady statistically late in 2015 with no Edelman. That's what it reminded me of there. And then to your point, now you need a guy to win outside. And what we saw in the Super Bowl was Brady, like you said, threw more trust routes, threw more, before the break type of routes, where I always call him more of a see it, throw it type of guy, right? His classic is, hey, Julian, run a 5-yard stem, you're going to run any which way. I'm going to wait till you see what move you're going to make, and then I'll just put it on your front number and let you catch and run. In the Super Bowl, he was throwing before the break. Malcolm Mitchell, Chris Hogan outside. They were unable to connect against Kansas City, and that's why you complete 44% of your passes, because it was a bunch of low percentage shots. So what do they do going forward? Because when Danny Amendola was in, before he got hurt, he had 100 yards on 6 catches,
right,
in a blink of an eye, and that was Brady's underneath guy. He didn't have Edelman or Amendola, and the whole offense just looked lost.
Yeah, that's it's gonna, hopefully he can get him back, because that's always his guy, whether it's Welker, Edelman, everybody that has followed Patriots for that many years. Brady loves that guy. They love their option routes underneath, and they miss that aspect. They're going to need Brandon Cooks to pick it up, and maybe some other areas that they weren't going to rely on him this early in the season. He's got to get going on the outside, and Gronkowski, we were kind of talking off air, just didn't look like he was fully going. Had the drop in the end zone that should have been a touchdown, and then just kind of didn't quite look the same like we typically see him. So they got to get everybody going, and then the backs. It's going to be curious just to see how they kind of try to offset with their different backs, and how they get those guys involved in the passing game. With James White, we saw him become such a huge part in the Super Bowl when they were clogging up the middle and taking away some of the crossers. So obviously no time to panic. One game, I think the Chiefs came out and played an absolutely great game defensively. So I don't think, not taking too much weight into the game, but definitely was weird to see Brady struggle.
Yeah, I have to give credit to the Chiefs as well, because the term I always use for that defense is they have the ability to play championship level defense. And to be honest, they shut down New England on 2 4th and 1s. I mean, they're also really close to giving up 30-plus points, but they made every throw very, very difficult. Made it low percentage, and Brady was inaccurate. I think for him, he was inaccurate. He did still drop a beautiful deep ball to Brandon Cooks over 50 yards in the air, right in stride, and that drop touchdown to Gronk, as you said. I think that was a big game changer as far as the momentum of the game, but that was a beauty too. Tight coverage and put it right on him. Other than those 2 throws, though, just very, very inconsistent for Brady, and I'm fascinated to see if they can get that quick passing game going. One more note on Brady, the thing I kept pointing out last year that he was getting better and better and better at as his career unfolded were those extended plays and plays that take a little bit longer those longer developing plays. He was 5 for 19 on plays that lasted 2.6 seconds or more the other night. That was a place that had become a strength for him, and 5 for 19, that's what I'm saying, low percentage opportunities for a New England offense that just relies on that, the quick hitting, short and intermediate stuff.
Yeah, no, he was number 2 passer rating in the NFL on those plays, like you're saying. The extent of the play was such a big thing, and it almost looked like at times he was trying to do it too much, thumbing guys around, trying to get them going different ways, and then just tossing up some prayers that was so kind of out of character for him. So they got some stuff to clean up, but I'm sure, as we've seen with the past before, it won't take too long.
They're on to New Orleans, so maybe that is the way to get that offense going up against that New Orleans defense this weekend. All right, Matthew Stafford and the Detroit Lions. It was not a great start for Stafford. Kicks off the season, first pass, pick 6, but he bounced back extremely well, ends up throwing for 4 touchdowns, makes yet another fourth quarter comeback. So Matthew Stafford, he was our top-graded quarterback going into Monday Night Football before Sam Bradford happened. And honestly, Drew Brees played well as well. But Stafford right now, number 2 quarterback in PFF grades as part of your PFF Edge package, 85.1. I talked about Bradford being fun to watch. Good Stafford is really a thrill to watch when he makes plays inside and outside the pocket with that incredible arm. What did you see from Stafford on Sunday?
Yeah, man. I mean, like you said, got off to a tough start. But after that, incredibly accurate, decisive, was moving off the spot and really was just making sound decisions all the way around. He was checking the ball down when he needed to, had some big time throws. He was, having a lot of success on right to left progression passing plays, kind of clicking through progressions, and then made a couple nice throws. We saw a couple digs on third down that, he was absolutely drilling right on the money in tight coverage. So, good Stafford is fun to watch. That's definitely, one of the better games you've seen from him. They got we talked about in the off season, just getting some play action going. Their play action game last year was really bad. He ended up with a perfect passer rating on play action with 6 of 7 for 108 yards and a touchdown. So that's a big part of their offense. The running game, he's never had a running game really, and they stayed committed to it just enough to to get some of those play actions open. But overall, man, it was a fun game to watch Stafford play.
So what Stafford was pressured 39.5% of the time. That's well above the league average. He has the number one adjusted completion percentage under pressure among guys that threw the ball at least 10 times. So when he faced pressure on Sunday, he was 9 for 15 for 77 yards and a touchdown. Pretty solid. But he also had 3 drops. So we're talking 12 for 15 is what he should have had with those drops, and take out a couple throwaways as well. 92.3 adjusted completion percentage if you take away those passes under pressure. So a really nice job by Stafford. You mentioned those dig routes, man. As the velocity and ball location on those, we're talking right on the guy's numbers with just really good zip. But then the off-the-spot ones, what was it? Was it cover 2? He's rolling out to the right, puts it over the corner in front of the safety, outside the pocket. It was one of those classic Stafford sandlot games. So much fun to watch. But here's my wet blanket again. With Stafford, this has happened many times throughout his career, where there's this one game when I'm like, okay, that is it. That, just like I said about Bradford, that is why he was picked number 1 overall. I'm seeing it all. I'm seeing the velocity. I'm seeing the touch. I'm seeing the good decision making. That's a number 1 overall pick. And there's a few games throughout Stafford's career where he looked like a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. And maybe you could say that about every quarterback, but man, there are some games where he just does special stuff. So how does he sustain it? How does the Lions offense sustain this, and how do they build on this? And I think the question for Stafford his entire career is that consistency factor. How do you get the best out of him week in, week out?
Yeah, I think you can tell and we've talked about it a bunch, just the comfort level with Jim Bob Cooter and the offense, and it seems like it's a very I wouldn't say it's simple, but it's not overly simple to where it's just cut and dry concepts, but they are keeping it a little bit more simple, I guess, than some other teams. And I think that's been the best way. They spread it out really well. And I think that's kind of boded well for Stafford, just spread him out, put him in the gun, get the ball out of his hand fairly quickly and get some completions and get him rolling. And then I think a lot of his game is the decision making late in the down, under pressure, trying to force too much. So if he can continue to make good decisions under pressure, like you said, was most accurate guy under pressure last week. So if he can continue to do that, then man, I think he's going to have a big time year, because you look at their playmakers around him, and he's going to be having to carry quite a load here. So although we got Galladay in there, had a big day, a couple of nice touchdown catches, so maybe he can emerge. But overall, it was fun to watch that Stafford game.
Just last week, we put out our top 32 quarterbacks heading into the season. Stafford in the top half. He was up there for both of us. Be sure to go listen to that episode. We had a lot of fun breaking down all 32 quarterbacks heading into the season. Again, with Stafford and these other former first-round picks, with Sam Bradford, your Alex Smiths, I'm always fascinated by these guys, because you would never look at them and say, okay, they've reached, they've all had good careers. You could say they've all had good careers. They've all done some stuff, but they've never, lived up to a number 1 overall pick status. But at times you're like, okay, now I can see it. So I'm always fascinated by either coordinators or supporting cast or whatever it is, their attempts to get the best out of the Sam Bradfords and Matthew Staffords of the world. So really good start for both of those guys. Want to take a quick break and tell you about our friends over at playdraft.com or Draft in your app store. Love these guys. Great way to play fantasy football. They have best ball leagues over at playdraft.com or Draft in the app store, meaning you're going to draft your team and then forget it for the entire season because they're going to take your best players. It doesn't matter about injuries, doesn't matter about trades. You don't have to worry about the waiver wire. You just set it and forget it. The drafting's great because you can do it really quick or you can kind of drag it on. Leagues start every couple minutes. So you just jump in a league anytime you want, and the best part about it is you can win real money. So you put up a little bit of money, there are real cash prizes to be won, and if you guys sign up right now today, use the promo code PFF, you'll get your first $3 game for free. I'm having a lot of fun with this. All the PFF guys are enjoying it. I've got some money invested in it. Hopefully by week 17 we'll have some money coming back in. So it's over at playdraft.com or Draft in the App Store. Use the promo code PFF and get to drafting. You can fire through a draft in probably 30 to 60 minutes. And I've just got a bunch of teams. I get a bunch of teams I'm keeping track of, but I'm not really keeping track because they're accumulating the points for me. They're just taking the best players. So get over there, playdraft.com or Draft in the App Store. Promo code PFF. All right, Zach, we're talking Houston Texans now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Your reaction said it. What were they sacked, 100 times?
At least. I think they were under pressure 100% of the time. If you combine Watson and Savage together, I believe it would be over 100% of the time if that's possible. But, yeah, it was ugly, man. Just to get into it, I guess, a little bit, just the offensive line wasn't good. Savage really, and I know we kind of just buzzed through the game before we got on here, he wasn't all that bad. I mean,
he wasn't.
I think, you look at just what was going on throughout the game, and you could tell that the offensive line wasn't going to hold up. They needed somebody that could get out of the pocket and try to make something happen because Savage just is not moving much off the spot. But, gosh, they were under pressure. Like we mentioned, I think Savage was 57% of the time and Watson was 55% of the time. That's going to make it tough on any QB.
I'm fascinated by this whole process, but let's start with this. First off, Jacksonville looked really good defensively. I mean, If you sack the quarterback, it was 12 times between the two of them. If you pick up that many sacks, first off, that's incredible. Secondly, coverage-wise, you talked about Savage. He did not have a whole lot of open throws when he did have time. Jacksonville's flying around, looking really good on defense. So that'll be a storyline to watch. As far as the two players, Savage and Deshaun Watson, they were the top two pressured quarterbacks as a percentage in the NFL this week. So they both got a chance to play, and it really didn't matter. The offensive line could not protect. 57.9% of Tom Savage's dropbacks, he was pressured. Deshaun Watson, 55.2%. So neither player had much of a chance. Your point about Savage is valid. Hey, if he's going to be facing pressure, he can't do much back there. But I'm fascinated by the fact that, okay, maybe Deshaun Watson's more equipped to run for his life, but that's the guy you just invested a first-round pick in. You don't want that guy running for his life. Do they have to go with Deshaun Watson, though, going forward because they're so depleted up front?
I would not. I thought that the hook to put him in the second half, I thought it was first unfair to Watson just because we've seen him in the preseason. He's just not ready to go, and I don't think that the offense is really set up to play to his strengths at this point. And to throw him in there in that game when everything was just obviously not going well, and to just throw him out there week one with down in the game and all those circumstances, I didn't think was fair to him as a player, as a rookie. And, it's going to be interesting to see just how they play this thing out going forward. But I would not play Watson yet. I would still stick with Savage and let Watson keep learning and developing because that is, we've talked about, it's a very high complex system. And Watson's making a huge transition from the system he played in at Clemson. And to throw him behind that offensive line and let him try to learn and play that way, I think you're just doing a disservice to him.
He certainly did not look comfortable back there, and comfort is like my trigger word. If you guys are listening at home and you guys want to play the PFF podcast, Big Time Throwcast especially, drinking game, when I say comfort and comfortable, just, take a sip. But I think that's the way to describe these rookies, right? Describe Dak Prescott's rookie season. He was comfortable. I mean, the first thing you saw was the comfort level. Describe Jared Goff's rookie season. Uncomfortable. He was not, he was not ready to go. He was not prepared. Watson is a lot closer to that uncomfortable spectrum, a lot closer to where Goff was last season. A little bit fidgety in the pocket. Now, you could see the athleticism. There was a couple times he broke contain and, used that good burst to move the chains, but he had a pretty poor grade. He was our lowest graded quarterback, I believe it was, for the week before review. Where is he? Yes. No, 33. And even 33 for Deshaun Watson. Lowest quarterback out of 31 graded quarterbacks this week. And, it was ugly at times. He made a couple throws, but there was a negated interception. There was some ugly decisions in there for Watson. And I know you've been a guy that I don't want to say has been critical of Watson, but you've had some red flags have popped up through the process and his ability to go through progressions and show that comfort in the pocket. Then you throw in one of the worst offensive lines in week one, the worst offensive line in all of the NFL. How could you possibly get comfortable in the pocket in that type of situation?
Right. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. It's just there are some things that we kind of scouted just watching before the draft, and then even this preseason they kept showing up a little bit. So he's not ready, and you're going to have to create an offense that's going to fit his skill set. And this offense is typically kind of a pure progression pocket offense, work from right to left on the radio dial, left to right, and that's really not what he's ever showed at Clemson and in the preseason. So I'm not sure if it's a great fit at this point. They're going to, if he's playing, they're going to need to do some move the pocket stuff, alleviate some pressure off of that offensive line and kind of cut the field in half for him because he's just not very developed in those areas due to lack of experience for the most part. So it's not a great situation for him there. You're hoping the best for him as a rookie, being thrown into the mix and in this circumstance is awfully tough.
So they're going to play Thursday night against the Cincinnati Bengals. As of recording time, it sounds like, hey, he has an ankle injury, but they want him to go. They want him to be the guy. Again, he's your first-round pick. You've got some pretty poor offensive line play. It's a little risky for a guy that you invested heavily in, and not a great situation. But we shall see. We'll see if that athleticism can help him while he's developing and learning the game. That's not always the strategy that you want, but
right.
I think that's what they're going with.
He's mentally tough dude that we've seen.
Absolutely,
all the way throughout Clemson. So I think that is obviously going to play a little factor in their decision as they know that he can handle it and not get too down on himself because there's definitely going to be he's going to make some good throws that we've seen him make down the field, and he's going to push the ball down the field. He's going to be aggressive. He's going to try to force the ball to Hopkins and try to do that. But there's going to be some ugly too. So hopefully he can just kind of realize what the situation is and try to make the best out of it.
One of the ways you described him to me along in the process, and by the way, how many discussions did we have where you would say, look, this is a red flag, and I'd say, but Zach, he bounces back from adversity, the character, and you would say, I know. I mean, I see it, and I feel, and there were times you started to doubt yourself through the evaluation process.
Yeah.
Like, man, this guy he wants it. He's got, all these intangible things are there, right?
Right.
But one of my favorite ways that you've described, not just him, but other quarterbacks, there will be weeks when things match up, right? Because if he gets the right look, if he gets something post-snap, what he thought he saw pre-snap, he can make some throws and he can move the chains and look pretty good. So, are we going to see some of that? Will there at least be some time this year where he has a couple good games and you're like, all right, maybe he's starting to figure it out, or do you think that is just so dependent on, the right game plan against the right team? We'll see a little bit of success if things match up.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. That's going to be a lot of it for this year is just matching everything up, and maybe there's certain coverages that he saw a bunch in college and they see a bunch of cover 4 quarters, and maybe he'll see a cover 4 quarters team in the Bengals this week that he feels comfortable looking at it and just knowing the defensive structure that way. And so there'll be some good, and like you said, when he can stay in rhythm on time and he sees it clearly post snap from what he saw pre snap, he has a chance to be a good player. So it's going to be a wild ride to watch him, but I think there's going to be flashes of good, which I think is going to be a positive.
All right, one more quarterback that we'll break down in depth, and then off the cuff, maybe we'll do a little like a quick fire, get as many quarterbacks as we can, just 1 or 2 words on each guy, because Zach, you're the guy over here when it comes to breaking down quarterbacks. We threw you into a dark room and said watch every throw this week.
Dark dungeon here.
Very dark dungeon. Hopefully you've got some light because it's just easier on the eyes, but we made you watch every throw. So maybe we'll do a little around the league, just fly through some quarterbacks. But let's break down Jared Goff, okay? We mentioned him earlier. He's uncomfortable last year. You and I did the Jared Goff summer podcast, and it felt like this excuse-making session, right? Well, he had a bad offensive line, and he had a bad system, and there was no quarterbacks on the coaching staff, and all these things that we, gave him a pass for last year, even though he did struggle. But, man, he looked so much better, and I come back to that comfort level, much more comfortable here in year 2 in a really nice start against the Colts.
Looked great, yeah. He was very crisp, just kind of looked like the guy that you saw in college, and some of those things started to show up. Well-designed game plan. Colts defense didn't look great. It'll be time will tell if it's a bad defense or not. But really, he had some clean protection in the pocket, and when he did, he was accurate. He was a lot more accurate than we saw him last year. And like you said, it just goes back to that comfort thing and knew when to check it down, get the ball out of his hands. He's always had a great feel in the pocket and good instincts. You saw those plays show up. So a lot of positive overall. I think the biggest thing, too, deep balls, he was 4 for 5, 112 yards and a perfect passer rating with a touchdown there. So pushing the ball down the field, Sean McVay's system, saw it in Washington with Cousins, and it's a real thing. He can dial it up. So he's definitely got the supporting cast and pieces around him to help him be a little more successful than last year.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it too. The deep passes. There was one that was underthrown. It was the Cooper Kupp show. I think Cooper Kupp went up and made the play, and that was great. But that touchdown that he threw perfectly right in stride. He threw a deep crosser. Basically he had a receiver running away from 2 defenders. There was a third closing defender. The window was tightening up pretty quickly, put it right where he needed to. And this is the stuff we saw a little bit in preseason. And I keep coming back to their weapons. I love the way they've built their weapons. There's not a whole bunch of number 1 receivers, but you could argue Sammy Watkins, I guess. But you have a Sammy Watkins, you have a Cooper Kupp. So, Watkins can be a deep threat. Kupp is just, I think he's going to develop into just an excellent possession receiver in the NFL. The guy knows how to get open. Gerald Everett had a nice 39-yard reception, just a nice shifty tight end as a rookie. So they've got all these different style playmakers now, and Goff looking a lot more comfortable in the pocket, seeing the game a lot better. This is going to be one of those offenses I watch every single week to see how they develop. Love what McVay's doing over there.
I'm with you. Yeah, he's had great game plans. We talk about the just the play action game in general last year, what we saw with what he could do with Kirk Cousins, and that's the biggest thing is they've got some offensive line pieces, help from Whitworth, and the play action game. If they can keep that thing rolling, then this might be one of the best offenses to watch in the NFL.
So, yeah, Jared Goff, he had me questioning my evaluation last year. And look, the Colts, I'll use the same caveat as Sam Bradford. Bradford went up against the New Orleans Saints, they've historically been one of the best defenses worst defenses the last couple of years. It looked like more of the same. The Colts might be the worst team in the entire NFL when Andrew Luck is not healthy. So we'll take it one step at a time. But if you're talking about taking steps forward and showing progress, Jared Goff absolutely there. Threw for 306 yards and 10.6 yards per attempt. 10.6 yards per attempt, ranked 3rd in the NFL this week. Do you want to fly through the NFL real quick? We don't have to hit on everybody.
Let's do it. Yeah, we can talk through a few guys there.
Any specific guys that jump out off the top of your head that had significant games that stood out to you, or do you want me to just kind of throw some names out?
Yeah, well, we had Alex Smith Thursday night. Man, you've always maybe been a little bit of an Alex Smith apologist, just because you've seen what he can do, and sometimes he can push the ball down the field. He has these games, these flashes, and man, that he had a full game of it, and that was great to see. He was hitting those guys in stride. Obviously Kareem Hunt throw down the middle of the seam was unbelievable. So that was a positive. Some of these other guys here, I guess on the negative side, Kirk Cousins, we talked about it, I think even just last week, 2 weeks ago, that we were expecting a little decline there. Offensive line didn't hold up. I think he was holding on to the ball a little bit and, forcing some throws. Seems like even dating back to the preseason, watching him, it just doesn't look quite the same arm-wise even. It just not coming out of his hand quite as good right now.
He had a really bad dropped interception in the first quarter. Then he started overthrowing passes. And then he had the bad red zone interception, and there was nothing we talked about more when it came to Cousins last year than his red zone woes. So those are back right now. I will say it seems like he's a historically slow starter. Last year I was ready to write him off completely through about 5 weeks because his PFF grade was well below average. And I think 2015, I think something it was similar. He started out really, really slow and put it together down the stretch. It'll be a challenge, though. I expected regression because of the different playmakers over there. Who else we got here? I thought Matt Ryan had some ups and downs there. The stats ended up looking pretty good thanks to a couple busted coverages and Austin Hooper. But that Atlanta offense not as crisp and sharp as it was last year under Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, it didn't look good. I couldn't tell how. Obviously, they're playing Chicago, so I'm sure the wind was up. But there was a few balls on his throwing to his left that just did not come out clean and did not come out good. Couldn't tell if the wind was blowing pretty hard in one direction, but just was not overall as crisp, just accuracy-wise on simple, outcuts and those type of things that we're so used to seeing him just, making us sleep.
Little 5-yard out, and it ended up being. I remember there was one that was actually caught, but it was a 5-yard out that a guy had to go well behind him and almost, took one off the ground. Aaron Rodgers, I had that Green Bay game watching it closely. For much of the game, I'm just like, wow, great defense on both sides. Rodgers ended up making a couple big throws like he usually does, held the ball a long time. He took, we charged him with 2 sacks. He actually was not being pressured. The offensive line was doing a fantastic job holding up against Seattle. We charged him with 2 sacks. So I didn't think it was Aaron Rodgers' best game. Threw that interception directly to Naz Jones, the defensive lineman, which should have been a pick 6. So not the best game from Rodgers, but made the plays when it counted, including the free play touchdown to Jordy Nelson, which was a seam route, which was just absolutely perfect.
Yeah, that was a sweet play. That was a weird game to watch. A hard game for Russell Wilson, obviously, with the offensive line up front. Other guy that stuck out was Marcus Mariota. Started off first half was great. I think when you watch we watched the game over and over. You saw the first half. He's always been more of a flat ball thrower, and we've talked about this. And in the first half, there was kind of some more clear window lanes for him to throw in, and then the second half, he was kind of required to throw. The up and over throws, up and over defenders, where you got to keep enough pace and enough arc on it. And he struggles with those throws from time to time, and they showed up a bunch in the second half. And he definitely struggled down the stretch there in the second half. Dak Prescott, we were talking, you mentioned it, just overall, accuracy was off a little bit. So few guys that we're used to seeing kind of hit more like Dak Prescott and Matt Ryan. We're definitely just out of sync a little bit.
Yeah, Dak ended up pretty good statistically, 90.5 passer rating, but he had 15 incompletions. I'd say 7 or 8 of them were just pure misses. I mean, there was a lot of just open throws that he missed. We'll see if he bounces back there. He usually does. Last year, every time we were ready to say, "Hey, Dak's inaccurate," most of the time it was against the Giants, and most of the time he did bounce back in strong fashion. So I will expect that next week. So, hey, I liked it, Zach. It was a good first show. We went in-depth on 5 guys, 6 guys, really, if you include both Texans quarterbacks, and a little around the league look at some of the quarterback performances. So I like that format. I think we'll keep that for next week. We'll try to squeeze in as much as possible.
It's good. I like it. Yeah, we cruised through all these QBs. I mean, there was I think a lot of it was O-line play dependent, which was interesting. We'll see if that's kind of something next week that shows up again. If these guys got with the defensive just a little bit further ahead at this point, is that kind of the difference? Is can you protect your guy up front and keep things clean while everybody's trying to get into this rhythm and get into the sync of things?
Definitely a trend to keep an eye on, and one that I thought was very noticeable last year as well when you talk about Dak Prescott and Carson Wentz. Both guys starting out so well as rookies last year at this time, and both guys had great offensive lines, at least through those first few weeks when it comes to Wentz. All right, guys, that'll do it for this episode today. This is the format, once a week, late Tuesday, early Wednesday, all about the QBs. Zach and I will break them down in depth. We love to hear your feedback. Hit us up on Twitter. I'm at PFF_Steve. He is at Zach_Robinson5. Give us your feedback. Give us your suggestions on which guys you want to see. And if you want to get into the big time throw game and use hashtag big time throw when you guys see a great throw. Could be college, could be the NFL, could even be high school. If you're at your high school game and you see a big time throw, I want to see it on that hashtag big time throw, because we'll be sending them out throughout the season as well. Don't forget, this entire episode is powered by PFF Edge and PFF Elite. You can get both of those products for free in various ways. You can get Edge for free if you go to profootballfocus.com/FanDuel17 or profootballfocus.com/DraftKings17. Make your first $10 deposit at either FanDuel or DraftKings, and you'll get PFF Edge absolutely free when you use the promo code PFF. And then, of course, PFF Elite, we're still giving one away every single week. If you guys leave a 5-star review, we'll take one of the reviews and just give you guys a free $200 PFF Elite. We've got our own secret society Facebook group that you guys will be a part of. And, of course, you'll get all of our award-winning fantasy stats and signature stats that you cannot find anywhere else. So leave a 5-star review on iTunes, leave your Twitter handle or an email address, some way that we can get in touch with you. All right, guys, be sure to tune in for the rest of the week. We've got a fun mailbag podcast between myself and Sam Monson, and then a very special Week 2 preview from a local establishment in Cincinnati, so you won't want to miss that. Stick with us. Hit that subscribe button. It's the PFF Podcast. We will talk to you guys next time.